that shit.
Welcome to Trash Talk MMA.
Smile on my face, behind my back, they talk trash.
The #1 podcast for news and insight that matters in the world of mixed martial arts. Brought to you live and unfiltered from all four corners of the globe by MMA aficionado Antoine Peltier.
Yo, and welcome to another edition of the Trash Talk MMA podcast. I'm your host, Antoine Peltier, and I have another special guest to interview today, my friend and up-and-coming Muay Thai fighter, Magnus Johansson, fighting under the Tiger Muay Thai umbrella in Phuket, Thailand. Magnus, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Couldn't be better. It's, Friday, February 27th. There's a big MMA weekend coming up. We got Invicta tonight. We got Bellator tonight. We got UFC 184 tomorrow. I know you're a big fan, too. Let's talk a little bit about you, Magnus, and then we can get into some of the latest news surrounding the MMA industry. Why don't you just let everybody know where you're from, how old you are?
I'm from Sweden, Stockholm, and I'm 23 years old.
Okay, so you're fighting right now Muay Thai professionally under the Tiger Muay Thai umbrella. Why don't you let the listeners know, what was your exposure and your experience with combat sports prior to coming to Thailand?
I started out doing some boxing with a friend of mine, just for fun. I really started liking it, so I bought home a big heavy bag, like a Muay Thai heavy bag, and just put it up in my room and started working on it. And then I just wanted to learn more, and that's why I looked up on the internet where I could go and learn more Muay Thai. Because I like the striking a lot, but I'd like to go into MMA later on.
Okay, so you picked up boxing first. How old were you when that started?
Must have been 22, yeah.
Okay, so very recently, just a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
All right. So you got into boxing, you brought a heavy bag home, you started teeing off on that, and you had your sights set on bigger and better things. What brought you to Thailand, and what more specifically brought you to Tiger Muay Thai?
What brought me to Thailand is, like, my brother said once to me, like, what would you think about going to, like, Thailand, for instance, and train more? And I thought, yeah, that's not such a bad idea, you know what I mean? So I started looking online, browsing a couple of forums, and yeah, I got my eyes on Tiger because it's a well-represented gym around the world, so
you basically heard other people in forums saying that, you just threw the question out there, hey, has anybody gone and trained elsewhere in the world or in Thailand in particular, and you just found a bunch of good reviews from Tiger?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, word of mouth, man. It's still always one of the best ways to market a product, right?
Powerful tool.
Excellent. When you were in Sweden and you were beginning to train there, what are the possibilities for training in Sweden? How popular are combat sports there?
It's pretty popular. It grew a lot since Alexander Gustafsson had his fight against John Jones, obviously. And that just sparked the interest of MMA in Sweden, I think. Since then, we've had 3 UFC, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah, so it's growing. You can pretty much train anywhere.
Well, that's excellent. So it's a sport that's embraced there, right?
Yeah, and it's growing. I think it's the fastest growing sport in the world right now.
I mean, Gustafsson has been in the UFC, long before, obviously, his fight against John Jones. But did it really take that title fight of that magnitude for the sport in itself to get exposure in Sweden?
I think so. We never really had any big combat sports representatives from Sweden, if you know what I mean. We've always been doing great at stand-up and Muay Thai and stuff like that, but just in MMA, I think that's what sparked the interest. Yeah,
it's interesting. A lot of people are somewhat confused by the UFC strategy to hold all these international cards, and often they feel like the cards are diluted and contain a lot of unknown fighters to the mainstream public. But it's great to see how this sport is becoming is acquiring a major presence in Europe. Which it hasn't had up until quite recently. So Magnus, when did you first come to Tiger Muay Thai? What were your intentions, and how long of a commitment did you make?
I came here for 3 months in the beginning of last year. I started out just doing Muay Thai group sessions, and I really liked it. A friend of mine, or a guy I met in class, recommended this trainer I started training with, and after that it just became more serious because I started to put more work in, and I really fell in love with it.
Yeah, so what's interesting about what Magnus has to say there is when anybody arrives to train Muay Thai at Tiger Muay Thai, they basically throw everybody into these group beginner classes. It's not that these classes are really dumbed down. They're just a way for the trainers there to evaluate anyone's skill set coming into Muay Thai. So you can have fought a lot before or nothing at all, not even knowing how to throw a punch or leg kick. And you join these group classes. They last about 2.5 hours. You do them twice per day. And based on your progression, the speed of your progression in these classes, they'll move you into an intermediate and advanced category. So it sounds like you just went right from beginner classes to actual private training classes with your trainer whose name is Pong. Is that correct?
Pong, yeah.
Okay. And you heard of Pong word of mouth through another friend that you were doing group classes with, or who had been doing classes with Pong already?
No, I had been. I have seen him in class because he's training in the beginner's class.
Yeah, you're right.
But I hadn't really done much pad work or anything with him. But this guy came up to me. I started chatting with him, and he recommended his trainer Pong. So
so once you started training with Pong, then you quite quickly at the end of those 3 months, I remember you eventually got your first amateur fight at the Tiger Muay Thai barbecue beatdown.
Exactly.
Walk us through that progression. How did you? I mean, you just showed up, you just started training, you did some group classes, started some private ones. What did you experience, and what did Pong see in you that made you both feel like you were ready for an amateur fight after just a few short months?
I think most of it was just my initiative. I wanted to have a fight before I went back to Sweden, just to get the feeling for it. I've never been in a fight, not even like a street fight in real life. You know what I mean?
Yep. So it sounds like that was really one of your goals. Was upon arrival to spend 3 months there and to walk away with some sort of combat experience, namely an amateur fight,
and a lot of more knowledge. Yeah.
Okay. How'd that fight go?
Pretty well, I guess. I lost the decision, but considering my first fight, it was a tough opponent. So I'm happy with it anyways, because you learn so much from a loss.
Yeah. I'm a jerk for asking that. I know exactly how it went because I was there. I was actually filming you, rooting for you to cage or ringside at that fight. The barbecue beatdowns, they're an interesting tradition at Tiger Muay Thai. They happen at the last Saturday of every single month. They do like a barbecue buffet. You can come in, get all the beer, and it's kind of a way for everybody's out there training their asses off super hard, trying to be as disciplined as possible. It's a bit of an opportunity for everybody at the end of each month to unwind, overeat, drink some booze. And for anybody who's training at Tiger Muay Thai, or anybody who really wants to, they can just step into an unsanctioned amateur fight and throw down with anybody else who's out there. So it's a fun evening. And it's an interesting opportunity for people such as Magnus who want to acquire some form of experience in combat sports and to get that under their belt.
Yeah, because it's a really good platform to have your first fight. Because these fights are with 16-ounce gloves and shin pads, and in the stadiums here, I think they're 10-ounce, so it's quite a big difference, and no shin pads, obviously. So just to get the feeling for it, I think that's a great opportunity to have your first fight at.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of people they like that environment because also the referees are they're aware that everybody's most of the people are coming out here for fitness holidays or martial arts holidays or vacations, and they're not here to get their nose broken or to leave with a concussion.
Yeah, you don't really see people get hurt.
Exactly right. My first exposure to you was I went down to Patong with some other guys just for a night of partying, and we ended up at the Tiger Bar on Bangla Road. Bangla Road is this crazy madness fucking street down in Patong, which is the wild city closest to where Tiger Muay Thai is, and there's just lady boys running all over the place and stupid ass ping pong shows and stray dogs running around biting people. You got to check it out at least once, but for me, once was enough. But anyway, we went to the Tiger Bar, and I met Magnus there, and there was one of those, those punching machines.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody's seen these. You walk into an arcade or into a fair, and there's one of those machines where the ball kind of drops down, and you smash the thing as hard as you can, and a rating comes up with your sort of the pressure you've applied to the punch. And I was there with a big group of Australian and British goons. Our good buddies Mike and Ted and Sean, etc. And guys like Mike and Ted, big Australian boys, they were pounding the fuck out of this thing and putting up huge numbers. And I remember everybody just being like, "What the fuck?" when Magnus showed up, and he was getting very much similar or better numbers. And you'll see from the pictures that I post when I put this podcast up, Magnus is what are you? You're about 6 feet tall, about 5'11", so 180 centimeters.
kilos, walking around pretty much.
Exactly. So that for our North American friends, is 145, 150 pounds.
Something like that.
So yeah, I've sort of described his build as as the Cole Miller build. If anybody knows a UFC fighter, Cole Miller, long, lanky, very tall, and very lightweight. So
yeah,
it's good. It's a good build for fighting though. So I remember great punching power from Magnus for a guy with your build, and then when I was filming you around around Tiger Muay Thai when you were training, I noticed a lot of hand speed. So it seems like the first sort of talents that emerged from you was definitely in your hands and your punching.
Yeah, definitely. Because I've mostly been training punching when I bought home my heavy bag, and I've been doing some boxing before, so that's where my strong suit is, obviously. But I'm trying to mix it up with kicks and elbows and knees and everything, but it takes a little while to come over old habits, I guess.
Yeah, we should talk about that a bit too, because that also plays into how your fights unfold, the tools at your disposition, and also how the fights are scored. I believe you're 2-2 now as a professional.
Yeah.
We'll also talk about how you evolved into being a professional. But as far as those fights are concerned, with your given skill set, how did they play out? I know not all the fights went in your favor, and not all of them ended in a stoppage. So speak a little bit on that.
My first fight started out, I was really nervous before my first fight, obviously, for obvious reasons. Even though I'd had one amateur fight before, but it's different when you're fighting in the stadiums. Because you just pretty much show up there and get assigned an opponent. You don't really know beforehand who you're going to fight. So it's a big surprise coming in the first time, you know what I mean? So, yeah, starting utilizing a lot of boxing in my fights, as I always had. Because I think I have pretty good power and speed, and
yeah, I mean, it seems to be your go-to move is to go with your punches, right?
Yeah, but that's the problem though, because I'm kind of overusing my boxing, whereas it doesn't score as much as Muay Thai techniques.
Yeah, for sure. I filmed your fourth fight down in where was it? It was at Magnus Stadium down in Patong, and it ended in a controversial decision loss for you. And I'll be, now that I have my YouTube channel up and running, I'm going to post those fights shortly so that people can watch you fight and make an opinion of what happened for themselves. But yeah, we're in Thailand. This is the country's national sport, and they have a very they have peculiar traditions and ways of scoring fights that definitely clash, perhaps, with a Western perspective. For example, if if you have a 5 or a 3 round fight in MMA, the fight goes to the end.
Yeah.
And in this fight, it appeared that in the 5th round, you had the momentum. I felt that you probably had lost the first round, that the second and the third round were toss-ups. I definitely thought you clearly won the 4th, went into the 5th with a ton of momentum. And they cut the fight short and awarded a decision win to your opponent. Yeah. And based on the little bit of feedback that I've received when asking around here, it seems like that decision was made that up until that point, and with the time remaining, your opponent was winning in their eyes. You didn't have enough time to win the fight, so they cut it short and give him the win. Now, don't quote me on that. I want to get some real veteran Muay Thai fighters in here to really give our listeners a breakdown of how fights are scored. But I know you also had a bit of an opinion on it because you guys touch gloves midway through the 5th round. Yeah,
that's the thing though. In Muay Thai here, you see sometimes in the 5th round when both guys starting to get tired, they will carry each other. So I thought I was just going to touch his glove and we would have a quick breather or whatever. But they cut it short, so I was prepared to fight again, but I don't know. It is what it is. You can't really
Yeah, I know. You'll hear me kind of, sort of explode in outrage. What the fuck? Why? First of all, why is the fight done? Because you can hear me yell to you, "Hey, Magnus, you got like 90 seconds left," and then they just go ding ding, it's over, and they lift this guy's arm. So I was very confused. In any case, You fought with a champion's heart. I know. Remember, you got tagged with a vicious knee. Actually,
Yeah, he dropped me with a knee
in the second round.
I think that might have contributed a lot to his win. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I mean, very much so, as it should. But you ate the knee. You stayed in the fight, and upon reviewing the fight, people will see that you were definitely winning the fourth and the fifth round. So good on you for staying in the fight and for putting up such a great performance.
Thank you.
People will also be able to see on these videos that I post kind of the hilarity of the whole experience of going into these. Going into these stadiums. Yeah. Everybody just goes in the front door. Fighters, fans, coaches, everybody. People are getting their hands wrapped right beside the opponent that they just met 15 minutes before.
That's right.
There's actually no formal supervision of how wraps are done. Anybody can do whatever they want. I can't even imagine if there are some dishonorable fighters or trainers what could be put into these wraps. Let's hope that's not the case. No, I mean, frankly, it's almost like you could slip a roll of quarters in there and nobody would know. Yeah. Anyway, I think, and that's also something that I want to talk about with some of these veteran guys, is there is a certain level of honor there has to be, because of the volatility and sort of the unregulated nature of these fights, that you're basically coming into a stadium, you don't even know who you're going to fight. There's no weigh-ins, there's no supervision of the wraps. You just you gotta love what you're doing here. Get in the cage and throw down.
Yeah,
it's fucking crazy, man. Yeah. So let's revisit the period after your first amateur fight at the Barbecue Beatdown and getting your first professional fight.
All right.
I think that's an interesting topic to discuss for anybody like yourself that's perhaps considering to come train in Thailand or just train wherever they are in their home countries, and go from not knowing how to fight at all to getting an amateur fight and then to getting a professional one. Yeah. What needed to happen for you to get a pro fight? Because I believe you did 3 months here.
3 months here.
You got your amateur fight. You went back to Sweden. You made some money, and you came back here back in September.
Correct.
Walk us through that.
So pretty shortly after my first amateur fight, I had to go home because my visa was expiring. So I went home for Sweden for 4 months just to work some money and come back here again, because I knew for a fact that I'd like to come out here again and fight in the stadium and doing the professional fights. So I told my trainer back in Thailand that I'd like to do a real professional Muay Thai fight when I come back, and I told him it was up to him to judge when he thinks I'm ready for it. So I came back here and after the first month or so, he told me, I think you're ready. So
basically you came back and immediately your intention had now changed from, okay, I got an amateur fight, to I can't leave here without getting a professional fight.
Yeah.
You put this in the hands of Pong to be like, hey, you're the one training me. You can evaluate my skill set the best. I'm going to put it in your hands to determine at what phase you feel that I'm qualified or that I'm ready to step into a professional Muay Thai fight.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So at that stage, so that happened a month after you got here?
Yeah, so 4 months in total of training before I had my first professional fight, yes.
Okay, so that fight then took place in...
Ta-Ied Stadium.
Ta-Ied Stadium, okay.
Which is a pretty small stadium on the street of Tiger.
Yeah, it's actually right beside where we are right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Pong helped you set up that fight. He cornered you in that fight.
Yeah.
Did you have anybody else from Tiger Muay Thai representing you or in your corner?
Most of the time, yes, I had. But most of the time you will have some other guy from the same gym fighting the same night as you, or sometimes even a trainer fighting. So they will help with cornering and give you advice and wrap your hands and stuff like that too. So you're never alone with your training in that sense, you know what I mean?
Basically, as a professional here, you were competing as a Tiger Muay Thai fighter.
Yeah.
But it seems like there's different levels of, I guess you could say, of sponsorship, of being part of the Tiger Muay Thai fight family. Where do you fit into that ladder at this phase?
I don't really know. I know that I want to get sponsored for sure, and that's what I'm here in. And right as it is now, I'm used to a regular person coming here to train and wanting to have fights, you know.
So basically, you come here to train, and you're paying to train.
Yeah.
But you're training regularly with Pong, who is a Tiger Muay Thai trainer, and he finds you fights, and then Tiger Muay Thai corner you in your fights. You're wearing the Tiger Muay Thai shorts.
Yeah.
So have you ever been on like a poster?
Yeah, they do take photos for the posters before the fight, a couple of days before. Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you feel about that? I mean, I think, you know, as somebody who knows you and what you're doing, I think it's a great experience. Of course, it would be, the ideal experience would be for you to be here and that they're taking care of you. I mean, if you could even have your, you know, I guess your housing, your food, and all your training paid for. Do you even know what needs to be done to access to that further level, or that level of actual sponsorship where they take you under their wing and you become really a part of the Tiger Muay Thai fight team?
I don't know if there's a few ways to do it or if it's just one way, because I know they have MMA tryouts and they will give 2 scholarships for Muay Thai as well. So that's one option, but other than that, I'm not really sure.
Okay. Well, that'll be interesting. Hopefully, we'll be able to talk to some of the higher ups at Tiger Muay Thai and get some clarification. Otherwise, I'm sure that if you really were interested in knowing what to do, you could easily talk with the people there. They're all they're all very accessible. So, why don't we talk a little bit about your relationship with your trainer, Pong? You know, you chose him pretty much right out the gate based on word of mouth. What sort of relationship have you guys developed as a trainer and a fighter?
As of today, I consider him like a brother to me, because you're always in the gym with him all the time. He's pushing you, and it forms a, I don't know how to say, but it's a rare bond, man.
Like a symbiosis.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And so, you know, obviously he's going to train you a lot. He's going to bring in other people to fight, to spar with you. How does that process work? Do you spar with him? Do you spar against other Tiger Muay Thai trainers or other Tiger Muay Thai students? What's that process like?
Yeah, first I started out sparring mostly with Pong, but he will find students who's on your level and match them up who's training with another trainer. So they will talk between themselves, and they will match us up, and we'll have a sparring session.
Now, what about the communication? I mean, obviously, Pong is a native Thai, individual, and you're Swedish and you speak great English. How does that work?
Sign language works well. Really. Most of the techniques is just showing me by motion, not really talking about it that much. He will use some couple of phrases that I will understand, or help me to understand what I'm gonna do.
I can imagine that you guys almost create your own sort of little mini lexicon that's between you and your coach with these language barriers that exist.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing I was curious about is between rounds in your fights, how does the corner advice play out?
Oh wow, yeah. Mostly it's just talking about the fundamental things that I most of the time will already know, like kick low, but he will also tell me some stuff that's hard to just to manage my breathing, for instance, and stuff like that. But it's a lot of people coming up to you and yelling, "Oh, low kick," or different techniques. But most of it will just go out from through the one ear and out to the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, because it's funny. Like if you watch UFC fights and in between rounds, sometimes. You can get some pretty complex information being transmitted from trainers to fighter.
Definitely, yeah.
And I can only imagine that's a challenge. If they're trying to actually surgically analyze your opponent and the things that he's doing wrong that you could exploit, or the things that he's doing right and that you're being a victim of, it's probably pretty hard for them to communicate that to you.
Yeah, definitely. That's the downside, but I don't know, they masters of the craft, so they really know what they're doing, and they prepare you really well before your fights, and they pretty much know what's gonna come or what's gonna happen.
Yeah, so I mean, I wanted to get you in for this podcast because I know that you're leaving Phuket tomorrow. So you're heading back to Sweden. What are your plans? How long are you going to stay there, and when do you expect to come back?
I'm gonna go back to Sweden now for about 4 months. Do the same thing again, just stack some money, come back here and get on it again.
So when you're back in Sweden, obviously your training is fully interrupted. Do you have any sort of routine or protocol that you like to follow when you're back in Sweden to keep yourself in shape, to keep your nutrition right? What happens to this world that you're in here when you go back home?
Oh, it's very different. Because considering you have to work like 50 hours a week back home, it kind of collides with the training. But I try to go out for runs and keep in shape just for the next time I'm coming back here, obviously. But it's really hard to get like real Muay Thai training because the classes will collide with my working hours and stuff like that, so it's really difficult. But yeah, as I've done in the past, I used most of my training here. Yeah.
One thing I'd just like to wrap up on here is, you said you'd never had a street fight, you'd never been in a fight here. You've done it. You've impressively, come out here, got an amateur fight in 3 months, came back for 8 months, had 4 professional fights. You're going to go away. You're going to come back. You're going to get bigger, better, faster, stronger. What is this experience like for somebody with, no combat experience to walk into an arena full of screaming fans and to put your health on the line against a totally unknown opponent? What's your mental game plan?
Wow, that's nerve-wracking. I just try to stay as calm as possible because you're scared to lose. You're not scared to get beat up because the pressure you put on yourself is way worse than taking any punishment. You know what I mean? So, yeah, you just try to stay calm and focused and composed. And I just throw a towel over my head and try to visualize the fight and what I'm going to do.
So you fear losing more than the thought of getting hurt?
Yeah, I think most fighters do.
Now, I'm sure some people who are in your situation, they come in, they also fear getting hurt. Can you speak on any injuries you may have, taken as a result of these fights?
Well, you get these knots on your shins, obviously, because you're going shin to shin full power, and you get a couple of bruises here and there and kicks to the ribs and stuff like that, but nothing serious yet.
So once you got into your fights, as opposed to your sparring at Ta-Ied Muay Thai with your training partners and with Pong, what was the first time you experienced a physical reaction that you'd never experienced before, and like what was your internal response to that?
I think in my first amateur fight, it was an eye-opening experience, really, because I wasn't prepared for that kind of punishment or taking 100% blows, because it's very different from sparring, because you're trying to work on stuff and not going too hard. Sometimes you do hard sparring sessions too, obviously, before fights and stuff like that, but yeah, I think the kicks in the first fight threw me off. I wasn't prepared, kind of pain, but as you train more and more, you get more resistant to punishment, and they really try to toughen your body, especially midsection.
Yeah, because the strikes to the midsection are something that I know I've taken a couple, and it's incredible how seemingly low impact these knees to the ribs I took, but it's incredible the amount of damage even the slightest strike to your ribs can take, and how long that damage can last. But so far you've been relatively healthy. I think in your last fight you left with a bit of a leg injury.
I think I didn't look it up, but I think I had a tore quad or something like that, but I'm all good now.
That was like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
You're feeling better now?
Yeah, feeling better now. I can go for runs and do some exercise. Did some sparring yesterday, so it's all good now. Yeah,
and I know we did the big Buddha walk, which is a pretty intense walk last night, and you passed that with flying colors. Well, listen, Magnus, it's been a real pleasure having you on board. I think your journey is really inspiring. I know you as a friend. I know you're a great guy. And you have a very calm demeanor, and it's interesting to see that you have this other side to you where you can step into the cage and take shots and give shots with the best of them. I, for one, am looking forward to following your career, to help promote you as much as possible. I think that's really important for young guys like yourself to know that there's some people that have their eyes on them and that have their best interests in mind. I look forward to you coming back here. Hopefully we can stay in touch while you're in Sweden, maybe do another podcast via Skype.
Yeah.
And most importantly, how can people follow you? How can people keep in touch with Magnus Johansson on social media?
There's not many options yet. I promise to get a Twitter account to make it easier for you guys to follow me. I don't have that many fans yet, but I hope this podcast is going to change that.
Yeah, it'd be great if you built yourself like a Facebook fan page, and as well as a Twitter account. I know you do have an Instagram account, and I know it's a funky Swedish name or word. Yeah. So we won't even try to to drop that here. I'll include a link to it on on my blog post and in the podcast itself, so that people can keep in touch with you and make sure we get the good word out there, so that people can keep following your fights. I'm also going to try to get Magnus's previous fights and post them out to my YouTube channel, so that there's a depository of all of his fights in one convenient location for people who'd like to check out his scraps. All right, guys, this was the Trash Talk MMA podcast. I'm your host, Antoine Peltier. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Facebook. Go check out the website, trashtalkmma.com. We got a ton of goodies up there for you, and we'll be catching up with y'all real soon. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Trash Talk MMA podcast. Be sure to visit trashtalkmma.com.
Smile on my face, behind my back, they talk trash.
And don't forget to follow Antoine on Twitter at Trash Talk MMA. Let us know you're listening. Use hashtag Trash Talk MMA.
Because I like the striking game a lot, but I'd like to go into MMA later on.
Okay, so you picked up boxing first. How old were you when that started?
Must have been 22, yeah.
Okay, so very recently, just a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
All right. So you got into boxing, you brought a heavy bag home, you started teeing off on that, and you had your sights set on bigger and better things. What brought you to Thailand, and what more specifically brought you to Tiger Muay Thai?
What brought me to Thailand is like my brother said once to me, like, what would you think about going to like Thailand, for instance, and train more? And I thought, yeah, that's not such a bad idea, you know what I mean? So I started looking online, browsing a couple of forums, and yeah, I got my eyes on Tiger because it's a well represented gym around the world.
So you basically heard other people in forums saying that, you just threw the question out. May weekend coming up. We got Invicta tonight. We got Bellator tonight. We got UFC 184 tomorrow. I know you're a big fan too. Let's talk a little bit about you, Magnus, and then we can get into some of the latest news surrounding the MMA industry. Why don't you just let everybody know where you're from, how old you are?
I'm from Sweden, Stockholm, and I'm 23 years old.
Okay, so you're fighting right now Muay Thai professionally under the Tiger Muay Thai umbrella. Why don't you let the listeners know, what was your exposure and your experience with combat sports prior to coming to Thailand?
I started out doing some boxing with a friend of mine, just for fun. I really started liking it, so I bought home a big heavy bag, like a Muay Thai heavy bag, and just put it up in my room and started working on it. And then I just wanted to learn more, and that's why I looked up on internet where I could go and learn more Muay Thai.
A fight of that magnitude for the sport in itself to get exposure in Sweden?
I think so. We never really had any big combat sports representatives from Sweden, if you know what I mean. We've always been doing great at stand-up and Muay Thai and stuff like that, but just in MMA, I think that's what sparked interest. Yeah,
it's interesting. A lot of people are somewhat confused by the UFC strategy to hold all these international cards, and often they feel like the cards are diluted and contain a lot of unknown fighters to the mainstream public. But it's great to see how this sport is becoming is acquiring a major presence in Europe. Which it hasn't had up until quite recently. So Magnus, when did you first come to Tiger Muay Thai? What were your intentions, and how long of a commitment did you make?
I came here for 3 months in the beginning of last year.
Has anybody gone and trained elsewhere in the world or in Thailand in particular, and you just found a bunch of good reviews from Tiger?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay, so word of mouth, man. It's still always one of the best ways to market a product, right?
Powerful tool.
Excellent. When you were in Sweden, and you were beginning to train there, what are the possibilities for training in Sweden? How popular are combat sports there?
It's pretty popular. It grew a lot since Alexander Gustafsson had his fight against John Jones, obviously. And that just sparked the interest of MMA in Sweden, I think. Since then, we've had 3 UFC, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah, so it's growing. You can pretty much train anywhere.
Well, that's excellent. So it's a really a sport that's embraced there, right?
Yeah, and it's growing. I think it's the fastest growing sport in the world right now. But
I mean, Gustafsson has been in the UFC, long before, obviously, his fight against John Jones. But did it really take that title?
Welcome to Trash Talk MMA.
Smile on my face, behind my back, they talk trash.
The #1 podcast for news and insight that matters in the world of mixed martial arts. Brought to you live and unfiltered from all four corners of the globe by MMA aficionado Antoine Pelche.
Yo, and welcome to another edition of the Trash Talk MMA podcast. I'm your host, Antoine Pelche, and I have another special guest to interview today, my friend and up-and-coming Muay Thai fighter, Magnus Johansson, fighting under the Tiger Muay Thai umbrella in Phuket, Thailand. Magnus, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Couldn't be better. It's, Friday, February 27th. There's a big MMA